What is up, crew? Greg here, and in today's video we are going to talk about how to have more effective sales conversations, specifically so you don't run into all of the objections that you get, or at least reduce the number of objections you get that happen at the end of the call when you finally make your offer and your pitch. I'm going to be walking through a little worksheet here. If you want the worksheet, go ahead and comment worksheet below. My team will reach out and get it to you. And I wanted to set a little context. This was a training that we did at one of our past Academy intensives. Inside our Alt Agency Academy program, we meet 3 times a year for 2-day workshops where we're actually implementing things inside of your business across the entire client journey, how you connect with leads, how you convert those into clients, how you deliver at scale, and how you scale your operations and team around that to run the business without you. Now, the reason why I want to cover this and kind of share specifically a topic that I learned from a guy by the name of Eli Wild, who is really known for selling for Tony Robbins. He was Tony Robbins' top salesperson for years. And he taught me this framework, which I then dubbed Eli's 10 clarities, and I'm going to walk you through that. But see, the reason this is important is, first, the problem that I see a lot of folks have inside of their sales conversations is that every single time they hop on a sales conversation, the way in which they conduct themselves and orchestrate and organize the agenda for that call, it's different. And so sometimes they'll take the lead, you as the owner will take the lead. Sometimes you kind of let the prospect run the show. Then it's kind of a mix the next time, and no one sales call is the same, which kind of leads into the second problem, that you find yourself having feels like there's an objection to buying or investing with you or moving forward with you at the end of the call after you've made the offer. And sometimes you'll feel deflated from that. You're like, man, that call was so great. And with there being 10 clarities and the call being different every time, you're probably experiencing some trends of, hey, you're always missing one area, or it feels like there's an objection for everything because, over 10 calls, you're cycling through these different things, one of these different 10 things that you're missing on the call. And so it just feels like sales is hard. It's difficult. Lastly, you might even feel like you're losing good prospects. Like the number of times I've heard clients that came into us before they started working with us say, man, like the call went great, but then they didn't move forward. And then we go and listen to their call or kind of dive deep into the conversation, and we uncover that they didn't go through and check off these 10 clarities, so to speak, inside the conversation, and that was the reason why the sale didn't happen. So the opportunity when you follow this framework is that every time you get on the conversation or get on a sales call, you're actually following a repeatable process. Now, what you'll find is these 10 clarities don't always necessarily need to happen in order. They just need to happen before you go and make the offer. You're covering these same 10 things in each and every call so that you know that you have a process and you're ticking off these 10 boxes as you go through. In addition to, once you start applying this to your sales conversations, you're going to notice that there's a lot less objections, possibly even 0 real objections to your sales process, which means the last thing is you're going to be enrolling more 5-star prospects. That's what I want to cover today. So before I jump into the 10 things, I do want to cover this notion of a 5-star prospect, because as I alluded to, we get a lot of people that come to us and say like, hey, like the call went so perfect, like this is like my dream client, and they, but they didn't buy. Like, why? And so I take them through this concept of the 5-star prospect, which is not my intellectual property. I learned it from Dean Jackson. He's the creator of the 9-word email, the super signature. He basically said that in order for a client to be a 5-star prospect, meaning they are exactly who you need to be speaking to, they need to check these 5 boxes. Now, the first one is they are willing to engage in dialogue. How many times have you been on a sales call where the person has been really difficult to speak with? Very closed. They're not willing to, to talk to you, or maybe you've been chatting through, you got introduced through email or on Messenger or something like that, and they're just not even wanting to hop on a call. So let's assume that they're willing to engage in dialogue. The next thing is they need to be friendly and cooperative when you talk to them. Have you ever been on a sales call where the person is very combative. They try to take control of the conversation right out of the gate, or maybe even being rude. We've definitely come across those people. I don't know if you have. So we need this person to be friendly and cooperative. Third, they need to know what they want. The number of times I've gotten on the phone in a sales conversation, someone was in pain, but they didn't know what they wanted. That's really difficult to have an effective sales conversation if the person you're trying to help doesn't even know what they want. Because here's the thing, you can't make them want something. They need to come to you wanting something. And if you do your marketing right, your marketing should attract people that have a specific problem and have exposed them to the opportunity or what the life would look like when they have that in place. Thus, they would know what they want. They might know what outcome they want. Now, in your sales conversation, you might be able to ask some specific questions. We've covered that in a different video that helps them discover what they want. But if they can't confidently get behind that goal or that desire, it's going to be difficult to close them because they're going to want to go back and think and double check and make sure that that's really what they want to do. So we want people to be on the call with us knowing what they want. The next one is that they know when they want it. In sales, there's we've asked this question a lot in the beginning of our sales conversations is, now that I understand what brought you to this call, is this a now conversation or a later conversation? Meaning, when do they want to fix this problem that they have? You might find people early on in their discovery process and they're like, I'm not sure, maybe in the next 6 months. And right when they say that, you already know that this is probably going to be some sort of a nurture deal. They need to know when they want to fix this. And obviously, the sooner the better for you. And maybe they already have things in place from a budget perspective, depending upon your market. They need to know when they want it. And here's the kicker, the last one. They want you to help them. If in your marketing and your sales conversation, you haven't demonstrated your authority and or your process to show them that they can trust you and that they would want your help, then it's going to be difficult to close this person. Again, a number of times we've talked to folks where our client will say, hey, they had all of the first 4, but they were missing this 5th one. Well, it's going to be difficult to close that person. Conversely, they might be missing the friendliness piece. They might be willing to engage, they might know what they want when they want it, they might even want your help, but they're not friendly and cooperative when you talk to them. If they're not friendly and cooperative when you're talking to them in a sales conversation, it's a really good sign that they're not going to be friendly and cooperative when you're having to work with them. If you're asking them questions on your sales call and they're very closed off and say, hey, I got to think about this or I got to do that, then you end up having them as a client and you're like, hey, I need you to go do this or get this thing done. And they're the same way. Don't be surprised. Comment in the comment section if you've actually been bringing on clients that are not 5-star prospects based on this criteria. Now, knowing that we're all on the same page about prospects, the idea that I want you to have is that we're kind of tying people down in order to get a breakthrough. And so when you're in a sales conversation, there's obviously 2 people on the call, and or if there's multiple decision makers, you're going to have the prospect or prospects, and then there's going to be you. They come to you with a problem, right? The problem, they're in pain or have this issue, and they want to move to a place of solving that problem, which is the goal. Now, the reality is, if you position yourself correctly, the goal is actually through you. But what's behind them when you're talking to them are these 10 doors. Imagine each of these circles is a door. And as you're talking to the prospect, you're going to move through these 10 clarities that are essentially the pathways, the openings for them to go back through one of these doors. A common one is, say, the timing, right? Or the cost of your program. If you cover all of the 10, if you only cover 9 and you don't uncover the cost of why solving this problem is important to them, that's going to be the objection, and they're going to go through that door. So as you're going through the sales conversation, I want you to think about the fact that there are these 10 doors that your prospect could choose to escape back to not have to make a decision on that call. And it's your job on that call to actually seal off these doors inside of your conversation so that when they're like, hey, you know what? This isn't a right now sort of thing. You get to say, hey, but earlier when we were talking, you said X, Y, Z. So did that all of a sudden change? And what they're going to realize is that that door of timing, they can't use it anymore because they already told you that they need this thing right now. And so as we have our sales conversations, ultimately what we're doing is we're going to walk over behind them, lock the door once we've tied down that particular thing, that particular area or clarity, as we'll cover, so that they can't use it as an excuse to not make a decision. Now, they can obviously find themselves in a situation where they don't trust you or something like that, which we'll get to, but the goal is we want to do our best to close off all of these doorways so that they get to a point where they realize the only way to get to this goal is through you and your service and or your core offer, your program. Think back to some of the conversations you had as we go through these 10 clarities, and you'll probably be like, oh yeah, like I remember that one and I totally didn't tie that down, or I didn't close that doorway, and that's the doorway that they escaped through and why they didn't buy. So let's roll through these 10 clarities real quick. Now the first clarity is pain, meaning that the prospect has some sort of pain or problem that they're experiencing, and they can identify, and or together you guys can identify what that is. If there is no pain or no problem, it's going to be difficult to have someone move forward. Now, the more severe the pain, the faster that they'll be, more likely they'll be to enroll sooner rather than later. So we want to understand how that pain is impacting them, which moves us to the next clarity, which is cost. Now, I don't mean cost of the investment to work with you, but the cost of inaction. Like, what does it cost them to not solve this problem? What does it cost them to have this problem continue on month after month after month? And we have to do our best to quantify that in some way. It's not always a money thing. If they don't solve the problem, maybe they're stuck having to work longer hours, and that's impacting their marriage or their relationship with their children. And that's something that they don't want to compromise because they've already seen maybe those relationships deteriorate. The next area is desire or a goal. Sometimes people come in their mind with less pain, but they have very high desire to achieve some specific outcome or reach some goal that they're so hungry they have to get there. And sometimes the cost is really just the gap between those two things, if that makes sense. The next one is finances. So do they have the money to invest into a solution? Meaning, what does their cash flow look like? What does their profit margin look like? Those are all things that are really important. I want to move this one over here because more tied to, not that these are necessarily in order, but more tied to desire and goal is the roadblocks. What are the roadblocks or obstacles standing in the way from someone to get from the pain to the desire? Outside of finances, a common one is a spouse or partner, depending upon what type of market you serve. Have you ever been on a conversation where they're like, oh, by the way, I need to run this by my partner? You need to know that there's a partner before you've made your pitch, before you've made your offer. You should know that hopping onto the call, ideally, that, hey, we need all decision makers here. Can you confirm that you are the sole decision maker, or is there anyone else? If that other decision maker is not on the call, it is in your best interest to reschedule that call so that all decision makers can be present. Outside of spouse and partner, trust. Do they trust you? Do they trust your process? There's tons of questions that you can be asking inside of your sales conversation to understand how trusting are they in you, your company, the results you've gotten for others, your process, your methodology, approach, etc. You want to uncover that inside of this conversation. Doubt is really the doubt in themselves that they can do it on their own. Knowing that you're here and you want to get there, why do you feel like you can't get there on your own? Maybe they want to move faster. Maybe they want a proven process. Maybe they've been trying at this for so long that they're not sure they can do it alone. We need to uncover why there is doubt in them getting this result. We also want to uncover timing, like I alluded to earlier. Is this a now thing or a later thing? And lastly, coachability. How coachable are they? When they come in to get help from you and you advise them to do certain things, or you're building something for them where they need to go, execute on the the game plan, are they going to take your advice? If it's maybe counter to what they thought, we need to uncover how coachable they are. So there's questions you could be asking to uncover, are they going to be a good client or not? If you have the right sales conversation, the right sales flow, you can, as you're making your way through the conversation, check these off. Like, okay, they got enough pain. We covered the cost, the desire and the goal, the roadblocks. Maybe you cover spouse and partner. They trust you. There is definitely doubt. This is a now thing, and they seem pretty coachable. And then you go to make your pitch and they're like, I don't have that amount of money right now. You missed one of them. You missed finances. And so you're going to get the finance objection. And that will come down and that will become the roadblock to you enrolling that person. And so what we find is that more often than not, most people are missing multiple of the 10 clarities inside of their sales conversation because they're really just winging the call and there's no process. When you get this right and you have the right prospect on the call, you'll actually be enrolling more people. You'll see your close rate go up because you're making sure you're covering these same 10 clarities, following the same script, the same process, the same protocol on every single call, that your life is going to become a lot easier. Now, if you want this workbook, go ahead and comment workbook below and think about which of these maybe you're missing inside of your sales conversation. And as always, if you're here and you want help implementing this, applying these to your sales process, go ahead and comment help, and our team will get you scheduled for a short call to explore if we can even help you, kind of brainstorm based on what we just talked about here, how this could apply to you. And if that makes sense, we can hop on a longer call and dive deep into how this might get executed inside of your business working together. Other than that, hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the rest of the day.